Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining me on this webinar this morning. My name is Tom Miller. I'm the Managing Director of READ NCFE, and this morning we're going to be talking about the new Baseline Employability Skills Test that we have developed and just launched in the last few weeks. We're calling it BESTest. I'd just like to thank College of North West London for hosting me this morning. So I'm broadcasting from one of their meeting rooms. So thank you for their hospitality. And it's a very warm, sticky morning here in London. And I hope it may be more pleasant wherever you happen to be listening in from. So I'm going to work through, in the course of this webinar, a short series of PowerPoint slides. In total, I shall probably keep you on the line, or hope to keep you on the line, for about 35 minutes. During the webinar, you are able to ask some questions. For those of you familiar with webinars, you hopefully can see a little yellow hand icon on your screen. You can click on that and use that to ask some questions during the course of the webinar or make some observations. If, however, you don't want to do that or can't do it for whatever reason, I will at the very end of the webinar give you some contact details for you to reply with some comments, some observations, some questions. And we will do our very best to come back to you within 24 hours of receiving those comments. So, as I say, what we're going to look at over the course of this webinar is our new BESTest product, and I'm going to talk you through that, and hopefully as you listen to what I say and see what I'm going to show you, you might think this would be a really useful tool to use in terms of your study program curriculum planning. Specifically for use within the enrichment part of your study program provision, and hopefully you'll see how this test could really transform how you try to measure distance travelled for learners, and indeed added value for learners as well. So we'll look at all of that as we go through. This test, Baseline Employability Skills Test, is brought to you by READ NCFE. Some of you, I'm sure, will know or know of READ NCFE. We work across a number of FE colleges and in England, also some universities, and we've developed this product about employability skills in conjunction with the University of Leeds. Now, I hope you'll take it as a given that coming from the READ stable and based on the work that we've been doing in colleges for the last few years, we do know a thing or two about employability skills and what makes young people ready for the labour market or not. We chose to work with the University of Leeds because it is one of the UK's leading occupational psychology universities, and has a lot of experience in producing psychometric tests. This test, BESTest, is a psychometric test, and I'll try and explain what I mean by that jargon later on, but basically it's really good news for you in terms of the quality of the test and what it can tell you. So this is a test that we envisage being used by you with your study program learners. Now, many of you will use a number of tests currently. So what is this test? Why is it different? Well, I'll try and explain that by saying what it's not, firstly. So it's not a personality profile. So some of you will use personality profiling tests for your learners. Our test doesn't seek to do that. So it doesn't seek to tell you whether your learner is an introvert or an extrovert or those other usual types of personality classifications. So nothing wrong with personality profiling, but this test doesn't do it. Neither is this test a career suitability or preference test, and I know that a number of you may use those types of tests as part of your career's IAG provision, absolutely fine. That's not, we're not in this test doesn't seek to say, oh well, you'd be suitable for this type of career or work out what your preferences are. So that's what it's not. What is it? It is what it says on the tin. It is a test that measures your students' employability skills and establishes a baseline measure, an accurate scientific baseline measure. And why I think in some ways that there isn't a test like this that measures employability skills per se currently available, and why I think this test is perhaps more useful than some of the other tests that are on offer, is because employability skills are really what the study program, in terms of its design, the study program charges you as colleges to do something about making your learners fit for the labour market. So the study program is not about changing their personalities or helping inform their career choices. It's about making them ready for the labour market. So this is right bang in the sweet spot of what study programs should be all about, and also, as I'm sure you all know far better than me, if and when Ofsted come to visit you, it's the employability skills measures that Ofsted will be looking for, not personality, not career suitability. So that hopefully gives you a wee feel for what the test is like. What are we going to do over the course of the webinar? Well, I'm going to try and do four things. First of all, I'm going to give you a little demo of the test itself. So I'll let you see some questions. I'm not going to show you the whole thing during this webinar. If you want to see the whole thing, we will be delighted to show you that. But I'll show you enough, hopefully, to let you see how it looks and feels in the hands of your users. And as I do that, I'll explain why we built it the way it is and how it works in terms of systems, setup, etc. Secondly, I'll give you a little demo of the results, because of course there's no point doing the test if you don't get, if the results of the test aren't informative and useful. And we'll look at results really in two dimensions. Dimension number one, the results that your learners will see. So what will the test tell them? And then dimension number two, what results will the college see? What MI can you produce from this, and how might you make use of that MI? Thirdly, I'm going to make some suggestions about how you might like to use the test with your study program learners to enhance the provision on offer to them. And then lastly, we'll just look at some next steps. So that's the shape of what we're going to do. So let's get straight into the test itself. The test comprises 30 employability skills questions. The questions are all really obviously about employability skills. The 30 questions will take your learners between 10 and 15 minutes to complete, absolutely no more than 15 minutes. That time is important because I think that is sized in a way that allows you plan for learners to do this test as part of their induction or their orientation or whatever, as part of their final assessments. Wherever you want to do it, it's of a size that is manageable for you to fit in around whatever other testing and assessments you might have in place for your learners. As you'll see, all the questions are what I've called situational workplace scenarios. So by that I mean that the questions ask your learners to imagine that they are in such and such a scenario in the workplace, and how would they respond. Or alternatively, the scenarios are about applying for positions at work, and such and such happens, and what do you do? As you'll see, none of the 30 questions have absolutely obvious right or wrong answers. There are no right or wrong responses. The range of responses are what will drive the score. So it's really impossible for learners to guess what they should be, how they should be responding. What the test measures, it measures both hard skills and soft skills. Now, clearly here I'm talking about employability skills. So what do I mean by hard employability skills? Well, we're measuring in the test, we're measuring 4 hard employability skills, and your learners will get a score for each of these 4. So the 4 skills are, might want to scribble these down if you've got a pen and pad handy. You will see this later on in the presentation, though, so don't worry too much. But the 4 hard skills that we're clearly measuring, and which the questions are constructed around, are these: CVs. So to what extent do your learners understand what makes a good CV? Number 2, job search. To what extent do your learners understand the different ways there are in which to find opportunities in the labour market? Number 3, interview skills. So to what extent do your learners understand how to present themselves to the best effect at interview to make the best first impression, positive impact? And fourthly, in terms of hard skills, we've called it workplace behaviours. So to what extent do your learners understand what is and is not appropriate behaviour in the workplace? So those are the 4 hard measures, and at the end of the test, your learners will get a score for each of those 4 things, and I'll demo that in a moment or two. In addition, it also measures some soft skills, and you will know, I know, employers keep telling us all that when they are hiring and developing people, they are in many ways much more interested in soft skills than in hard skills. So soft skills being sort of attitudes, behaviours, that sort of thing. So now people use different labels for these. So the labels that we have gone with are these, and hopefully on the face of it they make sense. So I'll just shout them out, write them down if you will. So here they are: motivation, professionalism, resilience, organisation, initiative, and sociability. Now, you can imagine, I'm sure, that when I was working with the University of Leeds, they spent a great deal of time working out absolutely precise definitions of each of these and what sits under each of them. And if you really want to see that, you can, but hopefully, as I've read out that list, hopefully you're thinking to yourself, yeah, those are the sort of things that employers look for in what we do. So I'm not going to explain any of them, save only perhaps the last one I mentioned, which is sociability. And sociability is the label that we have chosen to wrap up things like interpersonal skills, working in a team, making a good first impression, being able to get on with people, and so on. So we've labelled all of that sociability in our jargon, but each of the 6 words have got clear definitions. So measures a mix of hard and soft skills, and we'll see that in a moment how those results pan out. We have, over the course of development, which has been the best part of the year, working with the university, we have piloted various iterations of this test as we've developed it, in total on almost 1,000 learners, and that pilot has proved to us that, for example, the questions won't take more than 15 minutes to complete, that the test questions pump out those hard skills and those soft skills, but also the pilots have been really useful because we wanted to make sure that we produced a test that was suitable for all your study programme learners, so in fact for everyone at level 1, 2 and 3, and we are very confident that all your learners, level 1, 2 and 3, will be able to understand the questions in the way that we have written them, and will be able to understand and correctly interpret the range of responses in the way that we've written. And then secondly, the other big point of the pilot was to make sure that we ended up with a test that we could properly label a psychometric test. Now, some of you may know, have some experience with psychometrics. So sort of the big brands are Savile and Holdsworth, Myers-Briggs, and just caveat what I'm going to say is I'm not an occupational psychologist, and I don't really understand what we're talking about, but the key tests that are used within occupational psychology is that a test has to have validity, accuracy, and reliability. Now, again, all of those words have some scientific meaning and differentiation, but I hope it will suffice, at least for the purpose of this webinar, if I tell you that that means that there's a pile of science to prove that when a learner does this test, the results that you get out of it, or the learner gets out of it, are absolutely bang on accurate. That you can't fiddle the results. That if you do the test again, you'll get the same result. Blah, blah, blah. All of that means that the test is scientific and can be called a psychometric test. So a really high quality product that, you know, if you think back to that curriculum planning point I made at the very beginning, there's not much point planning your curriculum around what the test results throw up unless you are pretty well guaranteed that the test results are accurate. Well, they are, and we have the University of Leeds to back us up on that. And then behind the actual questions and the responses, there is a set of fairly complicated mathematical algorithms that map the different responses and produce scores for those hard skills and for those soft skills that I mentioned earlier. Right, well, enough on that. Let's get in to give you a little glimpse of what the test might look like. So I'm going to show you, I think, 3 example questions. So here's what they are. As I say, there are 30 questions in total. All the questions are obviously about employability. So here goes. Of the list of people below, who have you given your CV to for them to read through and give you feedback? So it is pretty obvious, isn't it, that this is a question about CVs. It's in the title of the question. So how your learner responds to this question will influence how they score on their CV metric, which is one of the 4 hard skills that we're measuring. But if you look through the range of responses, and you can do that yourself, what we're also measuring here is how motivated is your learner. So what's their motivation, one of the 6 soft skills. What's the motivation of your learner to make sure that their CV is as good as it can be? Also this range of responses measuring your learner's initiative. So to what extent have they shown some initiative, some imagination in terms of actually doing something to make sure that their CV is as good as it can be. So this question and this set of responses feeds into the score for CV on the hard skills measures and feeds into the scores for motivation and initiative on the soft skills. And the algorithms do that scoring. So that's an example of the question. And as you'll see, or hope you'll see, there is no obviously right or wrong response to this question. Okay, next couple of examples. You are browsing the web. You come across a company that you would really like to work for. They do not have any job vacancies advertised, and you can't see anything online. So again, question is obviously about employability, and actually it's obviously about job search. So job search being one of the 4 hard skills. So how your learner responds to this question will influence their job search score. But again, you can scan through the range of responses. These responses are also testing the soft skills of resilience and initiative. So, you know, resilience, how easily is your learner deterred from job search, put off initiative, what are they willing to do whenever they come across an obstacle. So that's how it works, feeds a hard score and feeds 1 or more soft scores. Thirdly, example question. You're in a job interview and the interviewer asks you how easy it is for you to get to work each day. The journey is quite long and not easy. You are worried that if you tell the interviewer this, they may be less keen to employ you. What would you say? So obviously, employability question, obviously a question about job interviews. So interview techniques, so it'll drive your interviews being one of the 4 hard skills, so it'll drive the score for that. But then this is about professionalism, so so how do you conduct yourself in work in a difficult situation? How open and honest are you with your employer? So it's about, this will drive a professionalism measure as well. So hopefully those example questions give you a bit of a flavour for sort of the look and feel of the questions and the responses. That's what your learner would see and experience. Work through 30 questions in absolutely no more than 15 minutes. So, I said before we look at what the results look like, I just said I'd talk about how the system is set up, how you and your learners would access it. Well, the BESTest, Baseline Employability Skills Test, sits on a platform that we buy in from a company called Qualtrics. Now, I suspect, like me, you have never heard of Qualtrics. I hadn't until a few weeks ago, but it turns out Qualtrics is the world's leading research software company, and they have a pretty impressive client list, including companies like Wikipedia. So by comparison, Reed NCFE is absolutely small fry, but we have sort of chosen Qualtrics precisely for that reason. So Qualtrics is a platform for doing this type of questionnaire research activity, and it is a tried and tested platform with thousands of millions of users across the world. And the reason why I tell you that, and why it should be good news for you, is because what we want to make sure is that if we have a situation in, let's say, September, where many thousands of FE learners are sitting this test on the same day, at the same time, we absolutely do not want this test to fall over or run slow. So by going with Qualtrics, we are absolutely assured that this is a good, stable, resilient platform that can cope with very, very high volumes. How you get at it, you will access it via your college portal. So your learners will access it via your college portal. So that's really good news, I think, because you can then sit this test on your portal alongside whatever other suite of tests, assessments you want your learners to do at the point of enrollment or induction or whatever. Likewise, at the end of the course, if you want to do it then. And also, it's through your portal that you will have access to all the various reports, or reports by individual learner, and as we'll see in a moment, by course, curriculum, campus, if you're a multi-campus college, and then for the college as a whole. So I'll just touch on that because it's important, obviously, very important. We'll be very happy to talk to you in a bit more detail about that, but it's a good, reliable, safe, easy setup. Good, so let's talk about results. And if you remember, I said, let's think about results in 2 dimensions. So dimension number 1 being what the learner gets to see. So here is what your learner gets to see. Now we've sort of moved the bottom, for the purpose of the slide, I've had to move the bottom bit slightly over, so it would flow, these 2 bits would sit together. But this is what your learner would see. And a copy of the result in this format would pop into your learner's inbox more or less immediately upon completion of the test. So I'll just talk you through what it is. So on the top left, you can see that this example is for a learner called John Smith. He's a business admin level 2 student. I know it's very small on the screen, but hopefully you can see it. And the first thing that you'll see is that John gets an overall score of 54%. So that is his overall, that's his baseline employability skills score. He sat the test, he gets an overall score of 54%. Now the test doesn't tell John whether or not 54% is good or bad or indifferent. However, you will know because you will see John's score plus everybody else in John's class or on John's course or whatever. So you'll be able to see whether 54 is good, bad, or indifferent by comparison to those, but the test itself doesn't say to John that's good or bad. Beneath the overall score, which is really useful, beneath that, I think, are the even more useful bits, and certainly more useful for curriculum planning. So you'll see that we have a set of 4 blue slider bars and 6 red slider bars with scores on. So the 4 blue slider bars, as you may be able to see in the small type, are the scores for John for those 4 hard employability skill measures. So the score for his CV, for his job search, for his interview techniques, and for his workplace behaviours. As you can see, John has a range of scores across those 4 hard metrics. The red slider bars, on the other hand, are his individual scores for the 6 soft skills: motivation, professionalism, resilience, organisation, sociability, and initiative. So he gets a score for each one of those. And so what does this tell John, or what does it tell you if you were to look at this? Well, fairly typically, John's got a range of scores that are, some are good, some are less good. But if you just look at his hard scores, for example, what this tells you is that John is weak on interview technique and on understanding of workplace behaviours. Now, why would that be useful for you in curriculum planning? Well, it means that in your enrichment provision, at least in your enrichment provision, but those are the areas that you might want to focus on. So you might want to make sure that John was having good interview practice and that you were allowing John to learn, both by teaching and also through work experience, perhaps, about what are the appropriate behaviours to display in the workplace. So it would inform where you really needed to concentrate your time and efforts to make John more employable. Equally useful, I think, in terms of curriculum planning are the 6 red slider bars. So you'll see here, if we look at the areas where John is weak, you'll see that John is weak on resilience and on sociability. So why would it be good to know that? What could you do with that in curriculum planning? Well, you probably know far better than me, but my suggestion would be that, so we know John is weak on resilience, that is going to hold, on his current baseline score, that's going to hold John back in his career post-college. So you might, in how you construct your course delivery, your main course delivery, and or your enrichment, you might make sure that John had the opportunity to experience lots of problem-solving challenges, so that you built his resilience. In terms of that sociability score, you might want to make sure that in how you deliver your main course curriculum and or your enrichment provision, that you make sure that John has the opportunity to work in teams to improve his interpersonal skills, has the opportunity to make presentations in order to make good first impression, etc. So you can see how these set of scores would really easily inform what you might want to do in terms of structuring your enrichment provision and actually your main course delivery, so that the whole thing together as a package ended up making John more fit for the labour market. So that is John's results. John will get that. And just finally on this page, it's worth saying that we've spent a long time thinking about how we present this. There is some text to the left-hand side of each of those slider bars, as you see, too small at the moment for you to read. But we are very confident, as a result of the pilots we've done, etc., that what we present here is in a format that John will be able to understand without the need for anybody else to sit him down and say, right, John, let me tell you what your scores mean. So these scores and the way it's presented will make obvious sense to John. So they have face value understanding. And that's, I think, really important, because then you don't need to spend time planning in a discussion about the results, knowing that that discussion might never happen sometimes or might not happen that well. So the results that John sees stand alone and will make sense to him. So moving on then from the results by learner into the second dimension, so what results will the college see? Clearly you will see John's results, and you'll see it in exactly the same way as John sees it, so you'll get that. But in addition, you can run a pile of extra reports for yourself. So here, for example, you might choose to run, you should choose to run, the results by course. So on this example, this is a college running the results for the whole of its engineering level 2 students. So this cohort of students, what are their strengths and weaknesses? We've used the same blue bar charts here for their hard skills, CV, job search, interview technique, workplace behaviours. 6 red bar charts for their soft skills. And again, isn't this really useful? So you would look at this cohort and you would say, you know what, for my level 2 engineering students, actually, they've got a pretty good grip of workplace behaviours, haven't they? So, I don't need to do too much more work in order to make sure they understand what's appropriate in the workplace. But, by Jove, they're never going to get there because their interview techniques are rubbish on the whole. So I need to do a pile of work around their interview technique. So that would be really useful. It would allow you to decide which areas you prioritize in terms of your content and delivery. Likewise, on soft skills, these guys are really motivated. So, you don't need to do much work on their motivation and imagine themselves in the workplace. They're pretty good in their sociability in terms of getting on with people, but they lack resilience and they lack initiative. So, so they need to be able to sort of get up and go. So they really want to be in the workplace, but they're not able to do anything, but they're not at the moment doing anything about it. So likewise, resilience, all that problem solving stuff. So you could put lots of stuff in place in your curriculum planning that would allow you to address those weaknesses in their employability skills. You might want to run your results by curriculum area, so just size it up. So you've started at the learner, you've gone to the course, now you've gone to the curriculum area. So here we have a set of results as an example for health and social care curriculum. Overall, this curriculum scores 60%. So, oh my goodness, if you remember, I didn't draw attention to this. Overall, the engineering level 2 had an overall score of 70%. So pretty good. So you might think, oh, this overall curriculum area of 60% might be a wee cause for concern. And then, so you can benchmark this curriculum area against other curriculum areas, allow you to see which curriculum areas are more needy than others, in the same way as you might do by course. So engineering level 2 might be less needy than childcare level 2. So again, that allows you to plan what you do. So just looking at this one by curriculum, again, you'll see that this group happens to be weak on interview technique, weak on motivation, and weak on sociability. So that's interesting for health and social care to be weak on motivation and sociability. We might touch on that later. But you would be doing some work with your learners around their interpersonal skills if you have a weak sociability score, because sociability in health and social care is pretty important, I'd have thought. And then on that curriculum set of results, you'll see there's also a set of red bar charts that show for each course. Now, just for simplicity, we've just shown health and social care and childcare. But again, you'll see within the curriculum, at a glance, childcare is more needy than health and social care. Really useful to know, I would suggest, in planning your resource and in planning your provision. You can run reports by campus if you are a multi-campus college. I've not illustrated that. And finally, I've just illustrated running it for the college as a whole. So your SLT would obviously be interested, I suspect, in the whole college report and certainly in the curriculum area report. And you'll see overall, your students score 70% this year. If you did this for several years, you'd hope that your overall score might go up. Again, you'd see that it just so happens, the way we've illustrated this, the big weakness in your students is interview techniques. So, and the big, in terms of their soft skills, is resilience. So much more provision for interview skills, mock interviews, practice, etc. Much more problem solving teaching provision within your curriculum areas. And then again, at whole college level, you'll have a breakdown by the curriculum areas. So here, for example, you might think engineering, media and IT, business admin, etc. Pretty good. Animal care, perhaps a wee bit more needy. Construction, a wee bit more needy. So that would be, wouldn't that be so useful at the moment? This is the sort of data that SLTs simply do not have, not available in terms of employability. And just remember, go back to that point I made, quite a boring point in some ways, but very important, about this test being psychometric. So this isn't just a sort of a roll of the dice and let's hope these results are accurate. These results can be absolutely relied upon. So that's what the results look like. I said I would give you some suggestions as to how you might want to use BESTest. So these aren't just my wild imaginations in some dark room. These are also suggestions that I have shared and that have been shared with me by other colleges, so hopefully they make some sense. And what we are suggesting is that you ought to think about using BESTest both at the start of the learner's journey and then again at the end. So why would you use it at the start? Some of these things, a lot of these things we've touched on already. So at the start, clearly if you were to do the baseline employability skills test at the start, you would establish an accurate starting position for your learners in terms of their employability skills position. But at the moment, quite many of you will try and possibly try really hard to establish their baseline position. But at the moment, you do it by a mixture of guesswork and subjectivity. So by guesswork, I mean that you might sit down and have a conversation with a learner, but with the best will in the world, because it's at the start of the course, you don't know that learner well enough to actually get their baseline position. So there's an element of guesswork. There's an element of subjectivity because whoever does that conversation with the learner, if person A does it, they'll come up with a slightly different interpretation than if person B does it. So it's subjective. This test gives you an accurate, reliable, psychometric baseline measure. Secondly, why would you do it at the start? Because think back to that report that John gets. So at the moment, many of your students, too many of your students, I suspect, don't engage as enthusiastically with your enrichment provision as perhaps they jolly well ought to. And part of that may be because they don't understand the need for it. So just think back to that report that John gets, and so John will sit a proper test, will get a proper professional set of results that is scientifically accurate, and John therefore will see and be convinced, or more convinced at any rate, that he is weak in areas A, B, and C, and therefore, whenever you're planning enrichment provision around those areas, his buy-in for participation will be greater. I think that's a really, really good thing that you will see. And of course, thirdly, doing it at the beginning allows you then to plan your interventions to make sure that what you have on offer is tailored and suitable for that particular learner's weaknesses and or their career goals. So why would you do it at the end? Well, again, we've touched on quite a lot of this. One reason for doing it at the end would be it provides further evidence of achievement. So evidence of achievement is great. You do it for your main course provision. This would provide evidence of achievement in terms of their employability skills measures. Many of you, I suspect, will work with something called a student passport or something like that. I'm sure you all know what I mean. This would be a brilliant feeder into your passport tool, because this provides yet further evidence of achievement of what they've gained through the college provision. Secondly, do it at the end because it provides evidence of cause and effect. And by that I mean, so we knew what the problem was, we decided we would do this, and here is the result. Now hopefully the result is that there's a big improvement in where the starting position was. But if there wasn't a big improvement, wouldn't that also be useful to know? Because you could then ask yourself, am I actually doing the right provision? Am I doing it in the right way? Blah, blah, blah. So it allows you evidence, cause and effect of your learning in employability skills, which I think otherwise is very difficult to do. We touched on this before. It allows you measure distance traveled. So pretty obviously, you get an employability skills score at the start and all those sub-measures for hard and soft skills. You get one at the end. There's the evidence of distance traveled. How beautiful would that be when Ofsted roll up and ask you to demonstrate what you do in terms of employability skills, provision, all this stuff about student development and progression, and what's the impact of it. There you have it on a plate, scientific, and you're doing it not just to tick a box for Ofsted, but you're doing it because it actually is really useful to do. It's useful for the learner, informs your curriculum planning, etc. It helps you assess added value, and it helps inform progression choices at the end of a course. So just for example, think back, if you can, to that little report I showed you about health and social care, where you ended up, if you were doing that test at the end of provision, and it pumped out saying lots of your students in health and social care had very low sociability scores. Well, that I think would be really useful for you to know, because that information might help you guide that cohort of student on their progression choices, because sociability, interpersonal skills, ability to chit-chat, make warm first impression, etc., is pretty important in that sector. So, you know what, if at the end of the course you've got really low sociability scores, you might well be having a conversation with the learner saying, you're not quite ready to go into work yet, you better come back and do another piece of provision. Or, alternatively, you might say that your personality isn't really suited to a career in health and social care. Let's think about something else. So it would really be informative and accurately informative, because this is a psychometric test. Okay, close to the end. Next Steps is a brand new product for 16-17. It is available right now. You could use it right now if you wished to, but the likelihood is you will be thinking about this for your 16-17 intake. If you have had any experience of psychometric tests like Self and Holdsworth Myers-Briggs, you'll know they are phenomenally expensive, typically between £30 and £50 per test. We have priced our test much more competitively than that, and I hope you might think this is a good value price. £2 per learner, and for that £2 you get, each learner can sit the test twice. So the learner can do the test at the beginning and then again at the end, in the way that we have suggested and would recommend that you use it. So £2 per learner, and you get all of that information for the learner, all of that comparison between different levels, courses, curriculum areas, etc. That will feed your curriculum planning, and that will really drive better enrichment provision for your colleges. I just want to touch on what we expect to happen a year from now, which will be 17-18 and beyond. What we, at the moment, if you were to do this test, you could, in 16-17, you'd be able to compare one course of yours against another course of yours, one learner of yours against another learner of yours. A year from now, you'll be able to compare your engineering level 2 students against engineering level 2 students nationally. We will provide some national benchmarking comparators so that you'll be able to see whether your students have got higher or lower employability scores, whether they've got higher or lower resilience scores, higher or lower initiative scores, etc. You'll be able to do those national benchmarks. You'll be able to compare whether your distance travelled is greater or lesser than national distance travelled. And I think that will be really informative. Now, we can only do that once we have a huge bank of data to allow us to produce those national benchmarking, but hopefully you'll see that this is a test that is worth doing this year, sorry, 16-17, because of all the stuff you get, but it's only going to get better, which I think might be a song, which I'm not going to sing. So that really is the end of the webinar. Thank you for bearing with me. I hope you found that interesting and informative. If you want to ask some questions by using that yellow
hand icon on your screen, please feel free to do so. In a moment, I'm going to shut up and leave I'll leave the screen open with my colleague's contact details to Stephen King. So if you want to email Stephen or give him a call, then he would be delighted to hear from you, and we will get back to you within the next 24 hours. So thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it interesting. I wish you a lovely rest of the day, and I'll shut up now and leave this on screen. Thank you very much.